The cuff tightens around your arm and you feel that squeeze, that little bite just above the elbow, and then it lets go with a sigh. 118/76. The doctor glances at the number, glances at you, and gives you the smile. Your heart, he says, is doing just fine. And at your age, that is the number that matters. Look after the heart and the rest of you comes along for the ride. Well, nearly everybody believes that, and I want to be straight with you. For most of my life, I would have believed it too. The heart gets the poetry. The heart gets its own holiday in February. A little red shape you can draw with 2 strokes of a pen. Nobody ever cut out a paper thigh muscle and mailed it to a sweetheart. But keep your hand on that cuff a moment longer, because I am going to tell you about a crowd of people in their 70s, watched carefully for years, and the thing that told you who was still standing at the end had nothing to do with the chest at all. It was down in the legs. And once you see why, you will never watch an old man haul himself up a staircase the same careless way again. Let me start by being fair to the heart, because it deserves it. It is a marvelous little pump. Think of it, a fist of muscle, squeezing and squeezing once a second, every second, while you sleep, while you argue, while you forget it is even there. It never takes a holiday. Over a long life, it beats something like 2.5 billion times without a single day off, and it moves a river of blood through you, gallons and gallons an hour, up to the brain, out to the fingertips, down to the toes and back. If it stops, you stop. There is no appeal, no second opinion. So of course the doctors watch it. Of course they built the whole ceremony of the checkup around it. They press their cold little disc to your chest and they listen. They wrap the cuff. They draw your blood and they hunt through it for cholesterol, for the fatty stuff that gums up the pipes. And they are right to, because when you count up the ways people die in the wealthy part of the world, the heart and its plumbing sit at the very top of the list. Year after year, more than anything else, it is the heart that takes them. So the logic seems airtight. Heart disease is the #1 killer. Therefore, if you want to know who is going to live and who is not, measure the heart. Measure its pressure, its rhythm, the muck in its arteries. It is clean, it is sensible, and I want you to sit inside that comfortable idea for a while, because it feels so obviously true that it is almost rude to question it. When you are 70 years old and the doctor tells you your pressure is good, you walk out of that office lighter. You feel like you got a passing grade on the only test that counts. And here is the thing about a belief like that. It is not stupid. The people who hold it are not fools. Some of the smartest, most careful physicians who ever lived organized their whole practice around it. It is built on real numbers and real death certificates. When an idea is that well dressed, that respectable, you had better come at it with something serious, because it is not going to fall over from a gentle push. So let me push seriously. Some years back, a very large study went looking. Not a small clinic, not 100 people in one town. This thing reached across 17 countries, rich ones and poor ones all over the map, and it enrolled 139,691 people. Everybody between 35 and 70 years old. They followed this enormous crowd for a median of about 4 years, keeping track of who lived and who died and what went wrong. Now, when you have that many people, the small accidents wash out and the real signal comes through clean. This was a serious instrument pointed at a serious question. And here is what they did that was clever. Along with all the usual business, the blood pressure and the rest, they had each person squeeze a little device. Just grip it as hard as you can in your hand. It is the plainest measurement you can imagine. No needles, no laboratory, no waiting for results in the mail. You squeeze, a needle moves, you write down the number. A child could run the test. Now, what would you expect? You would expect the fancy medical numbers to be the strong prophets of who dies and the silly hand squeeze to be a curiosity, an afterthought. That is not what happened. What they found was that for every 11 pounds of grip strength a person had lost, roughly 5 kilograms, their risk of dying of any cause at all went up about 16%. And their risk of dying specifically from the heart, from cardiovascular trouble, went up about 17%. Read that again slowly. The strength of your hand was telling you about your heart. And here is the blow, the part that should knock the wind out of the comfortable idea. That grip measurement predicted who would die better than the blood pressure did. The cheap squeeze beat the proud cuff. The thing you could measure at a county fair outpredicted the number the whole checkup is built around. Now when a physicist meets a result like that, he does not celebrate and he does not panic. He gets suspicious. Because that is strange, isn't it? Why on earth should how hard I can crush a spring in my fist have anything to do with whether my heart quits? My hand is not my heart. There is no artery of destiny running through my palm. So either this is some fluke, some accident of the statistics, or, and this is the part that makes your skin prickle, or the grip is not the real thing at all. It is a messenger. It is a little dial on the outside of a much bigger machine, and the machine is what is failing. The grip is not causing anything. It is reporting. And if the grip is only a messenger, then you want to ask, a messenger for what? What is the big machine it is telling tales about? Your hand is a small, faraway outpost of your body. If a small outpost is running down, maybe the whole territory is running down, and the hand is just where you happen to plant your flag and take the reading. So the honest next question is, could I plant the flag somewhere better? Somewhere closer to the heart of the matter, if you will forgive me. Somewhere with more muscle, doing more work, carrying more of the weight of being alive. And of course there is such a place. It is the biggest engine you own. It is your legs. So people went and looked exactly there. There was a study, a careful one, that took 2,292 people, all of them between 70 and 79 years old, right in the years we are talking about, and followed them for close to 5 years. And this time, they did not settle for a hand squeeze. They measured the strength of the big muscle on the front of the thigh, the one that straightens your knee, the one that does the heavy lifting every single time you stand up out of a chair or climb one step. They measured how much force it could make. And now watch, because they did something that separates the real scientists from the storytellers. They also measured how much muscle there was, the size of it, the bulk. Because you would think, wouldn't you, that a big thick muscle is a healthy muscle, and a thin waisted one is the dangerous one. That is the obvious guess. Size is what you can see in the mirror, size is what you brag about. So which one predicted death? Was it how big the muscle was, or how strong it was? It was the strength, not the size. The size, the raw bulk of meat on the bone, once you accounted for the strength, faded into the background. It was the force the leg could produce that carried the warning. For every standard step down in leg strength, and they measured that step at about 38 Newton meters of torque, the risk of dying climbed hard. In the men it went up by about half again. In the women it climbed even more, by about 2/3. And it did that whether the muscle was thick or thin, because a muscle can be there, taking up space, looking perfectly respectable, and still be weak. It is the strength that talks. It is the force. The bulk is just the packaging, and the packaging can lie to you. Now sit with how peculiar that is. Two men, same age, same size legs, you would swear they were the same. But one can drive that knee straight with real power, and the other one cannot. And it is the strong one who is far more likely to be alive in 5 years. Not because his heart is measurably better on any chart the doctor drew. Because his legs can push. And I keep telling you the strength is only a messenger, a dial, a report from the machine. But by now you should be leaning forward and asking me the question I have been dodging on purpose. If leg strength is such a faithful little prophet of life and death, then what in the world is the machine? What is actually going on down there in those two big pillars of muscle that makes them tell the truth about the whole body, better than the heart tells the truth about itself? Hold that question tight, because before I answer it, I want to hand you the simplest, strangest test in all of this. A thing you can do this very afternoon on your own living room floor. Here is what I want you to try. Clear a little space and lower yourself down until you are sitting flat on the floor, cross-legged if you like. Then stand back up. Simple. A child does it 100 times a day and never thinks about it. But here is the rule. You are not allowed to put a hand down. You are not allowed to lean on a knee, or grab the couch, or push off the wall. No cheating. Down and up, using nothing but your own legs and your own balance. Now, some doctors in Brazil made a little game out of this. They gave you 10 points to start, 5 for going down, 5 for coming up, and every time you needed a hand or a knee or a wobble that made you catch yourself, they took a point away. A perfect score is 10. Somebody who has to plant both hands and shove off a knee to get up might score a 3 or a 2. And then they did the thing that turns a parlor trick into physics. They took 2,002 people between the ages of 51 and 80. They scored every one of them on this silly floor test. And then they waited. 6 years and more, they followed these people and they counted who was still alive. Now think about what that test actually measures. It is not your cholesterol. It is not a picture of your arteries. It is you versus the planet, versus gravity itself, lowering and lifting the whole weight of your body with control. And the people who scored lowest, the 2s and 3s, the ones who needed both hands and both knees, they were dying at something like 5 to 6 times the rate of the people who floated up with a perfect 10. Let that number sit on you. 5 to 6 times. And it got sharper still. For every single point you could add to your score, just 1 point, 1 less hand on the floor, the risk of dying in that stretch of years dropped by about 21%. 1 point. And of all the people who scored a flawless 10, out of the whole crowd of them, only 2 ever died in the follow-up. 2. When a later group of researchers ran the same floor test again and watched people for about 12 years, they found the poor scorers had nearly 4 times the risk of dying from natural causes, and about 6 times the risk of dying specifically from the heart and the blood vessels. Do you hear the joke nature is playing here? The best predictor of whether your heart is going to kill you was not a machine strapped to your chest. It was whether you could get up off the floor without your hands. So now you cannot dodge the question any longer, and neither can I. Why? Why should sitting and rising? Why should a straightened knee? Why should any of this out-forecast the pump in your chest? And here is where I make good on my promise and tell you what the machine actually is. Come down with me into the calf, into the meat of the lower leg, the big muscle in the back that swells when you rise on your toes. Feel it on yourself, that thick cord of muscle behind the shin. In there, threading up through the muscle, are the deep veins of the leg, the pipes carrying the used, dark, oxygen-poor blood back toward the heart. Now think about the plumbing problem this poor blood is facing. When you are standing, that blood down at your ankle has to climb. It has to go up, against gravity, more than a meter, all the way back to the chest, and the heart is up top pulling on it about as well as you can pull a rope by pushing on it. The heart is a magnificent pump for shoving blood out and downward. It is a lousy machine for sucking blood back up from your feet. So who does the lifting? The calf does. Every time that muscle squeezes, it clamps down on those deep veins like your fist squeezing a tube of toothpaste, and it drives the blood upward. And here is the gorgeous little piece of engineering. Inside those veins are flaps, one-way doors, valves. When the muscle squeezes and the blood jumps upward, the doors above open and let it pass. And the instant the muscle relaxes and the blood tries to fall back down towards your feet, those doors slam shut and hold it right where it is. Squeeze, and it climbs. Relax, and the doors catch it. Squeeze again, and it climbs higher. Step by step, floor by floor, the blood is walked up the stairs of your own leg. That is why they call the calf the second heart. It is not poetry. It is a real muscular valve pump, and when you are up and moving it does a genuine share of the work of getting blood home. And this matters to the first heart, the one in your chest, in the most direct way imaginable. The chest heart can only pump out what comes back in, fill it fuller, and it answers by squeezing harder and throwing out more with the next beat. Stretch the muscle a little more, and it snaps back a little stronger. So a leg that pumps well hands the heart a fuller cup, and the heart gratefully pours out a fuller cup in return. The whole circulation is a partnership, and the legs are the silent partner doing half the lifting. Now picture the opposite. Picture legs that have gone quiet, weak calves, sitting all day, muscles that barely squeeze. The doors are still there, but nobody is working the pump. So the blood pools. It sits down at the ankles and swells them. The veins, overstuffed and pushed on from within, bulge and twist into those ropey varicose cords. And in the worst case, the stagnant blood, sitting still where it was meant to be flowing, clots, and a clot in a deep leg vein is a deadly thing that can break loose and travel. So when I tell you the strength in your legs is a messenger, here is part of the message it is carrying. It is telling you whether the second heart is still on the job. A strong leg is a working pump. A weak leg is a pump gone silent, and the silence backs up through the whole system. And you can watch this partnership fail from all the way across a room without a single instrument, just by how a person walks. Some very patient scientists pooled together 9 separate studies of older people, thousands of them, and all they did really was time how fast each person walked across a short stretch of floor at their own comfortable pace. Not a race, just their own natural stroll. And out of that plain little measurement, that ordinary walking speed, they could read life expectancy the way you would read it off a chart. There is a pace, a little under 1 meter every second, right around the speed of an unhurried walk to the mailbox that sits at the middle of the road, the ordinary life expectancy for your age. Walk faster than that, habitually, easily, and your odds run better. Walk slower, shuffle, and the odds slide the other way. And the spread is enormous. Take a man of 75. Depending only on how fast he walks, his chance of being alive 10 years later ran anywhere from about 19% for the slowest to about 87% for the briskest. For women of that same age, from about 35% up past 90. Same age, same birthday on paper, but their gait, the speed of their own 2 legs across the floor, split them into nearly opposite fates. Because walking, you see, is the whole machine reporting in at once. To walk fast, you need the muscle and the nerves firing clean, and the balance and the heart and the lungs and the second heart in the calf, all of it cooperating in a single smooth act. The pace of your walk is the whole orchestra playing one note, and you can hear whether the orchestra is in tune. So now you know what the machine is, and you know why the messenger tells the truth, which forces the cruel next question. If the legs are this important, what exactly is being stolen from us as we get old, and how fast is the thief working? And here is the part that ought to frighten you a little in a useful way. After about the age of 70, you are losing muscle. Everybody is. The bulk of it, the sheer mass of meat on the bone, drains away slowly, something like 2/3 of 1% a year in a woman and a bit under 1% a year in a man. Slow. You would hardly notice from year to year. If that were the whole story, you could shrug. But it is not the whole story. And here is the trap. The strength does not drain at the same lazy pace as the mass. The strength runs out the door much faster than the meat does. Where a man might lose under 1% of his muscle bulk in a year, he can lose 3, even 4% of his strength in that same year. The power leaves faster than the flesh. Think of a candle that you have somehow lit at both ends, but one end is burning far quicker than the other. You look at the candle and it still seems a decent length, plenty of wax left, and you feel reassured. But the flame that matters, the strength, is racing down toward your fingers far faster than the wax is disappearing. You are being fooled by the mass. The muscle is still sitting there on your leg, looking more or less like a leg, while the force it can produce is quietly collapsing underneath. That is why a person can be shocked. They felt fine, they looked the same in the mirror, and then one day they could not rise from the floor, and they never saw it coming, because they were watching the wax and not the flame. By the time many people reach 80, something like 1/3 of the muscle they carried in the prime of midlife is simply gone. And the strength, remember, went first and went faster. Now I want to show you something that ought to stop you cold. Because when I first turned it over in my head, I thought, no, that cannot be right. That is too strange to be true. Take twins. Identical twins, the same genes, the same blueprint down to the letter. In London, some careful people did exactly this. They gathered 324 women who were twins, some identical and some not, ranging from their early 40s into their 70s, and they measured the power in their legs. Not just whether the woman could push, but how fast and how hard, real power, on a little rig built to catch it. Then they waited. They came back 10 years later and tested the minds. Memory, thinking, the sort of thing that fades as we get old. And here is the jolt. The women with stronger legs at the start had held on to their thinking far better a decade on. The size of the effect was not small. A gap of about 25 watts of leg power between two women, which is a modest gap, an ordinary gap, lined up with something like 10 years of aging in the brain. 10 years, as if the weaker-legged one had let a whole decade run ahead of her up in her skull where you would never think to look. And they checked the obvious dodges. Was it the diet, the heart, the smoking? They accounted for those, and the legs still spoke loudest. Then they did the thing that makes me sit up. In 9 pairs of identical twins, they slid both sisters into a brain scanner. Same genes, remember. Same factory. And in those pairs, the one with the weaker legs had brain ventricles, the little fluid spaces in the middle of the brain about 26% larger. When those spaces grow, it is because the brain around them has shrunk. So the weaker-legged sister, the genetic copy, was carrying a visibly more withered brain than her stronger-legged twin. Same starting material, different legs, different brain. Now you must be careful how you read that, and I want to be honest with you, because a good scientist does not oversell. This does not prove hammer and nail that pushing with your legs pumps intelligence up into your head. It is a strong link, not a signed confession. But when you set it beside everything we have already built here, the calf as a second heart, the pump that keeps the blood climbing, you begin to suspect that a body which moves powerfully is a body that keeps its whole self well fed, brain included. The legs are not just holding you up, they may be helping keep the lights on upstairs. So now we have knocked the old picture flat. We came in believing the heart was the king, the one organ to guard, the one number to read off the cuff, and instead we have found the legs everywhere, in who dies and who lives, in who can rise off the floor, in who walks fast enough to keep their years, even, it seems, in whose mind stays sharp. And the natural human question, the one you are surely asking, is the good one. Fine. If the legs are the thing, can I do anything about it? Or is this just a slow verdict read out over me while I sit here? You can do something. And this is the part I find genuinely cheerful, because most grim news in medicine comes with no lever to pull, and this one comes with a lever. The lever is resistance. Lifting something heavy, on purpose, against a load that fights you back. When people looked across many studies at older adults who did this, just this, the muscle work and nothing fancy, they found the ones who trained against resistance had roughly 15% lower risk of dying from any cause. About 19% lower from heart trouble, the very thing we started out worshipping. About 14% lower from cancer. From lifting things, from asking the muscle to do hard work and letting it answer. And then the sweeter finding. When people combined the two, the lifting against resistance and the ordinary aerobic moving, the walking, the getting the breath up, the benefit did not just add, it leapt. Something close to 40% lower risk of death from any cause. More than either one bought alone. The two together are not two medicines in the same bottle. They are more like a fire and the air you feed it, and you do not need heroic amounts. The benefit from the lifting climbed and then leveled off at around 60 minutes a week. 1 hour. Split it however you like across 7 days. That is the price on the tag. It is astonishingly cheap for what it buys. Think about what that hour is actually doing down in the tissue. Every time you make that muscle strain against a real load, you are sending a message, a chemical shout, that says this fiber is needed, keep it, feed it, do not let it waste. The candle we spoke of, burning down fast at the strength end, that flame does not have to race. You can walk over and cup your hand around it. You cannot stop the wax from shortening. None of us gets out of that. But you can slow the flame. You can push the day you cannot rise from the floor out past the edge of your life so it never arrives at all. That is not a small thing. That may be the whole thing. Let me leave you with the man whose voice I have borrowed to tell you all this, because his own ending fits the lesson in a way I could not have arranged on purpose. Richard Feynman was born in New York City in the spring of 1918 on the 11th of May. He died in Los Angeles on the 15th of February 1988 at the age of 69. And here is the thing worth noticing. It was not his heart that took him. It was a rare cancer in his belly, a thing that had come back after the surgeons had cut it out once before. His heart, as far as any of this goes, was not the villain. He kept teaching almost to the last few weeks, standing up, doing the one thing he loved, the mind still lit. And near the end, when a machine could have kept his blood clean a while longer, he looked at what that would buy him and he chose, clear-eyed, to stop it and to go. I tell you that not to be gloomy, but because it aims the whole lecture back at the right target. We spend our worry on the heart, the pump, the pressure, the numbers on the cuff, as if that one organ decides everything. And for a great many people, it simply does not. What decides so much of the last stretch is quieter and lower down. It is whether you can still stand, still climb, still push, still cross a room at a decent clip, still get up off the floor under your own power. It is the legs, the unglamorous, hard-working, taken-for-granted legs doing their pumping and their carrying while all the attention floats up to the chest. So the next time you sit down on the ground, pay attention to how you get back up. That small private moment, the one nobody grades, may be telling you more about the road ahead than any number a doctor reads to you. Guard the legs, and you are guarding far more than the legs. Everything upstairs is riding on them.